The rain fell in thick, icy sheets, drumming against the cracked asphalt with a rhythm that made her chest ache. Steam rose from the twisted wreck of the car, curling into the fog like pale fingers reaching for her. She stumbled forward, her dress torn and plastered to her skin, each step a battle against the slick, muddy ground. Her arm burned where it had caught on the shattered metal, blood mixing with the rain, running down in warm, sticky streaks. Her vision blurred, not just from the storm but from fear, confusion, and something else, something she couldn't name, something lurking inside her, waiting. The forest loomed ahead like a dark promise. Trees arched over the path, branches clawing at the fog, shadows twisting in ways that seemed almost alive. A howl cut through the night, then another, and another. Wolves. Or at least, that's what she told herself. She couldn't tell if it was real or if her mind was breaking, fracturing beneath the weight of the world. She swallowed back a scream and forced herself forward, heart hammering, lungs burning with every ragged breath. And then, heat. Under her skin, a fire flickered, tingling in places it had no right to be. Her vision flared with silver sparks, glinting across the fog and trees. Her body reacted before her mind could catch up, muscles trembling with a power she had always feared, always tried to hide. She whispered into the darkness, voice small, shaking. I can't die like this. I won't. A flash of memory stabbed through her, sharp and bitter. You don't belong. You never did. Her old pack's words echoed, bitter as the wind cutting across her face. She stumbled again, your knees sinking into the soft, wet earth, but something, instinct, maybe, propelled her forward. Survival, fear, and a whisper of destiny pushing her along. Her unborn child shifted inside her, a tiny heartbeat that was more urgent than her own, a tether that refused to let her fall. And then a thought, soft but insistent, broke through the panic. If you love intense rejected Omega stories and fated mates, subscribe to Moonlight Mate Story. Somewhere in the distance, the wolves paused, ears pricked. Somewhere in the shadows, the forest held its breath. And somewhere inside her, something dangerous stirred, awakening. The forest seemed to exhale as the shadow moved, long, deliberate, impossibly large. Rain's slicked branches snapped under weight, but the sound was swallowed by the night, as if the darkness itself bowed to him. And then he stepped into the clearing. Fur like midnight, wet and gleaming under the silver moonlight, muscles taut and precise. Golden eyes, so intense they seemed to pierce not just the fog, but into her very chest, fixed on her. Even the wolves, those relentless, unseen hunters, froze, ears flattening, growls dying in throats as if they recognized a command stronger than fear. The night held its breath. She wanted to scream, to fight, to pull away. But before her limbs could decide, he was there. Words came, low, deliberate, carrying weight she didn't understand. Her name. Just her name. And somehow it was both a caress and a summons, and it pulled her toward him even as panic tried to coil her spine. Then, effortlessly, impossibly, he lifted her. Weightless. Her body pressed close to him, heart hammering. Yet the strange heat that had flared under her skin moments ago began to retreat, the silver sparks fading from the corners of her vision. Panic dissolved into a strange calm. She should have been terrified. This was a man whose power could crush her in an instant. But instead, something unnameable stirred inside her, threading through the terror, weaving fear into something more dangerous. Curiosity. His hands were firm but careful, fingers tracing over trembling arms, guiding her like she mattered, like she was precious and fragile and dangerous all at once. She noticed the faint scars on his knuckles, the evidence of battles fought and won, and something deep inside her stirred with recognition, a warrior carrying his own quiet pain. She tried to look away, but the pull was magnetic, a tether from his golden eyes into hers, and her breath caught. Who are you?" she whispered, voice hoarse, though the words seemed trivial under the weight of him, under the gravity of the power radiating from his presence. A faint, almost imperceptible smirk touched his lips, and for a heartbeat, the world outside, the forest, the rain, the wolves, didn't exist. Only him. Only the heat, the safety, and the dangerous, unspoken promise that lingered between them. And somewhere, deep in her chest, a spark of recognition, something she couldn't name, but knew she couldn't ignore, told her that this man was more than a savior. He was a reckoning, a pull of fate, and perhaps the first hint of the mate she never dared to hope for. Even as he held her, even as the warmth of his presence pressed against her, her mind spiraled back into the shadows of a life she had long tried to bury. Memories clawed at her chest like frozen talons. She could still hear the whispers of the pack, those venom-laced murmurs that had defined her childhood. Dangerous bloodline. Best be hidden, they had said. You're a curse, a spark too wild, too volatile. Every word had etched itself into her skin, not as scars but as chains, binding her to shame she never outgrew. She had learned early how to make herself small, how to vanish into corners, how to speak softly so no one would notice the tremor in her voice, or the heat that had always surged beneath her skin. Even now, standing beside the Alpha, her body betrayed her, flickers of silver light crawling along her veins as if eager to announce her power to the world before she could control it. On her pulse thrummed in rhythm with the memory of rejection, with the echo of her father's denial, with the isolation of nights spent alone, wishing for someone to see her and finding only silence. And yet, here he was, watching, not judging, not recoiling, just observing. And in the depth of his golden eyes, she glimpsed the impossible. Someone who might recognize the courage woven into her fear, the strength stitched through her brokenness. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, every memory of exile tugged at her to hide, but another, quieter part of her dared to hope. Could someone see all of her and not turn away? Could someone bear the fire she barely understood herself? The ache in her chest was more than loneliness. It was longing. Longing to be accepted, to be held without fear, or to be chosen even while she carried the weight of a forbidden power she had never asked for. Even as shame flickered like storm clouds across her thoughts, a fragile ember of defiance glimmered. She was more than what the pack had whispered, more than the exile had broken her into. And maybe, just maybe, he could see it too. Every breath she drew was a battle. Every glance she risked toward him was a gamble. Every heartbeat was a testament to survival, to courage, to a flickering hope that the destiny she feared might not be a curse, but a revelation. And in that quiet tension, in that shared silence, the first seeds of trust, and something far more dangerous, far more compelling, began to take root. The forest opened before her like a secret the world had forgotten, a sacred grove untouched by human greed, bathed in silver moonlight. Frost clung to every branch, glittering like 1,000 tiny stars, and the air smelled sharp, alive, electric. She stepped forward, her boots crunching against frozen leaves, and felt it immediately. The pull of something older than time, older than fear. The stones rose from the earth in solemn circles, etched with runes that hummed faintly, vibrating beneath her fingertips when she dared to brush her hand across them. The world seemed to hold its breath. Her pulse raced. Memories whispered in her mind, voices of elders long gone, echoing as though carried on the wind. The one with the mark, child of the flame. The words struck her chest like a blade. Denial surged first, stubborn and fierce. She was just her. No magic, no prophecy, no silver fire waiting to break loose. And yet, the warmth under her skin, or the subtle pulse of energy she had tried to ignore, was undeniable. Every step brought the hum closer, vibrating through her bones, into her very heartbeat. Then the vision came, sudden and vivid. A woman, silver flames licking her skin, eyes alight with an intensity that left no room for doubt. And beside her, a child, crowned in moonlight, kneeling wolves bowing as though recognizing a power that had existed long before the world itself. The sight left her breathless, awe and terror mingling in equal measure. She felt her own body respond. Pregnancy no longer merely a weight or a secret. It throbbed with possibility, a blessing she hadn't dared hope for, a curse she hadn't dared imagine, both wrapped into one impossible truth. The Alpha's presence grounded her, even as the vision surged. He stood a step behind, silent, golden eyes wide, reverence and fear flashing across his features. He had seen many powers, ruled many packs, faced countless threats, but never this. Never a force so raw, so intertwined with destiny, so fragile and so unstoppable at once. Doubt clawed at her throat. Could she accept this? Could she bear to claim a future written in fire and moonlight, one she had spent her life fearing? And yet, anticipation rose alongside fear. The air seemed charged with possibility, the forest itself alive, waiting to see what she would choose. Somewhere deep within, a seed of resolve stirred. This was her path, whether she wanted it or not. And for the first time in her life, she sensed that her strength, hidden, feared, rejected, might just be enough. And the grove had barely begun to breathe under her hesitant steps when the sound of snapping branches tore through the night like a warning. Shadows moved faster than any human stride could carry, and then they were there. Figures clad in darkness, each one a wolf shifter of power, eyes glinting with accusation, teeth bared even before words left their lips. "Forbidden pregnancy," one growled, voice sharp, shaking the very air. "Omega corruption," another barked, their tone more venom than alarm. "She'll destroy us all." The words collided in her chest, a brutal echo of every rejection she had ever endured. Panic clawed at her mind, but beneath it, something deeper stirred. She felt it first as a tremor in her belly, then as heat creeping beneath her skin, sparks of silver light flickering in her vision, burning through the fear. Eve the Alpha stepped forward, golden eyes locking on his rivals, his jaw tight. He could defend her, protect the pulse of life and power that shone so vividly in her. Yet the weight of his pack pressed down like ice. Every heartbeat was a drumbeat of decision. Every breath a tension coil waiting to snap. And then she could no longer hold it back. The silver fire erupted. It tore from her in jagged arcs, splitting the frozen forest floor, setting sparks of frost and underbrush aflame. Wolves recoiled, nostrils flaring, ears flattening, but the blaze was hers, raw, uncontained, magnificent. It carried her fury, her fear, her heartbreak, and her power all at once. She didn't understand it fully, but the world understood. At least for a moment, it recognized that she was not to be trifled with. The pack, however, did not waver in their verdict. Exile. Their voices rang with authority, fear, and prejudice, and yet she did not tremble. Shoulders squared, chest heaving, she turned away. Every step forward burned with a vow she would carry forever, to protect him, to protect her child, to protect herself. She would not be cowed, not by them, not by fear, not even by the impossible weight of destiny pressing on her. And in that moment, heartbreak and simmering anger braided together, raw and unyielding, forging a resolve she had never known. She was her own force now, and the world would have to respect it. The cave breathed around them, ancient stone walls humming with quiet, earthy warmth. Firelight licked the jagged surfaces, flickering shadows across her face. Each movement of the flames seemed to mirror her own trembling heartbeat. Fast, erratic, unpredictable, she pressed herself against the cold wall, shivering, not just from the damp chill but from everything that had led her here. The smell of smoke, of moss, of earth. It grounded her in a way the outside world never had. He knelt before her, sleeves rolled, hands careful but commanding as he cleaned the ragged cuts along her arms. His fingers lingered at the edges of bruises, tracing without touching, mapping pain without judgment. She flinched, then relaxed. Somehow, his presence told her it was safe to let her guard slip, if only a fraction. Every glance he offered carried a weight she could not ignore. Golden eyes that seemed to see more than skin, more than blood, more than fear. "I didn't ask for this," he murmured, almost to himself, almost to her, voice low, roughened with something she could not name. "Being alpha. It's lonely. You think the world is yours to command, but half the time you're just standing alone in a storm, hoping someone understands." She swallowed the lump in her throat, heart hammering against her ribs. "I've never been loved for all of me," she whispered, voice breaking. "Only for the parts people can use, the parts they like. I'm scared. Scared that if I let someone see everything, I'll only be abandoned again. He leaned closer, just enough for her to feel the warmth radiating from him, just enough that her breath caught. Hands hovered over hers, fingers inches apart. Silence stretched, broken only by the quiet crackle of fire and the distant hum of the forest beyond the cave mouth. I see you, he breathed, voice low, intimate, a promise tangled with desire and danger. All of you. Not the mistakes, not the pain. All of it. She almost believed him. Almost let hope creep into her chest where fear had lived for so long. Almost dared to imagine that maybe, just maybe, she could be more than rejected, more than exile, more than the world had told her she was. Almost. And it terrified her. This fragile, trembling trust, this tiny bloom of desire she had not allowed herself to feel in years. The firelight danced between them, between her terror and her longing, and for a heartbeat, the cave became more than shelter. It became a world where two broken hearts could almost meet without being torn apart. A moment of intimacy before the storm outside, and the storm within, claimed them again. The grove, once sacred and quiet, erupted into chaos. Torches flickered against the heavy night, shadows twisting like accusing fingers. Wolves circled, our eyes sharp, teeth bared, but it wasn't just the beasts. Pack after pack of humans and shifters alike had gathered, murmuring, judging, condemning. Her heart hammered, each beat echoing the dread she had buried for years. She stepped forward, trembling, and then the words cut through the night, sharp as broken glass. She is the child of flame. She will destroy us all. The council's voices merged into a single accusation, a chorus of fear and betrayal. She froze, every instinct screaming to flee, yet rooted to the spot by disbelief. Faces she thought were allies twisted into masks of fear. Friends, mentors, even those who had once shown kindness, now spat venom in their eyes. Her identity, every secret she had clung to, every mark she had hidden, was exposed, used against her. The Alpha's eyes met hers across the chaos, and in that heartbeat, she saw hesitation. He faltered, just for a moment, a sliver of doubt, a shadow of choice. But that brief pause was enough. Enough for the dagger of betrayal to sink into her chest. Enough to shatter trust she had almost allowed herself to feel. A scream tore from her throat, a raw, unfiltered cry that held every ounce of fear, every ounce of rage, every ounce of heartbreak she had endured. Her body burned from within. Silver flames erupted, snaking across the snow-dusted ground, turning the night into a swirling storm of light and heat. The wind howled with her fury. The trees bent beneath the energy of her awakening. Wolves yelped, scattering as the air thickened with power that defied control, that could not be ignored. And then, with a final flash that left the grove trembling, she vanished. No footprints, on no warning, just a pulse of heat fading into the night, leaving a silence so heavy it pressed against the hearts of all who had witnessed it. Alone in the darkness, her breaths came ragged, her chest heaving, the weight of betrayal still clinging like fire on her skin. Rage and devastation warred within her. She had been rejected, humiliated, marked as a threat. And now, for the first time, she glimpsed the full magnitude of the power she carried. It was terrifying, overwhelming, and intoxicating. The world she had known lay shattered at her feet. The Alpha who had almost been her anchor now felt impossibly distant, and yet, even in her fury, part of her longed for him to see, truly see, the woman she was becoming. The one who would rise, unstoppable, unbound, and unafraid. The air hung thick with smoke and ash, the screams of her people echoing through the shattered forest. Torches flickered in the distance, barely illuminating the horror as wolves scattered, some injured, some terrified, all powerless before the true threat. The enemy who dared threaten the sacred ritual, who dared threaten the Alpha she had come to trust, the unborn life growing within her. And then she stepped forward, bare feet pounding the frost-hardened earth, each step sending tremors through the soil. The cold had no claim on her now. The fear, the doubt, the shame, they all shattered like glass beneath the surge of silver fire that coursed through her veins. Her pulse quickened, not with panic, but with clarity. She could feel the ancestors whispering through the marrow of her bones, voices older than time itself, chanting, guiding, reminding her that she was no mere omega, no helpless girl abandoned by fate. She was power incarnate. The silver flame erupted from her body like liquid lightning, licking the trees, winding around ruins buried for centuries, causing stones etched with ancient runes to hum and glow, to awaken as if recognizing their rightful heir. Wolves halted mid-step, ears pricked, eyes wide in awe, sensing the undeniable pull of a force beyond their comprehension. The pregnancy she had feared, the life she thought would make her fragile, now radiated from her as an unshakable shield and a blazing weapon. The moonlight caught on her hair and eyes, and she looked every inch the legend whispered about in fearful tones. A child of flame, unstoppable, unbound. From the shadows the villain emerged, arrogance etched across his face, weapon drawn, believing he could intimidate her, control her, destroy her. But she did not flinch. Her voice, steady and full, carried through the chaos. Ancestors spoke through her, not just in whispers but in roars that shook the canopy, voices mingling with the fire, demanding justice, demanding reverence. Light burst through the trees, brilliant and pure, blinding in its intensity, and she faced him, unafraid. In that moment, every betrayal, every rejection, every whispered insult from the pack, every moment of doubt had forged her into something far greater than fear. She was awe, she was vengeance, she was inevitability. Her hands glowed with silver fire, eyes flashing gold in defiance, and the enemy faltered, sensing the full magnitude of what he had unleashed. She had claimed her power, and she would not, could not, be sacrificed. Not for him. Not for anyone. The forest itself seemed to bend, holding its breath, waiting for the next move. She stood radiant, terrifying, beautiful, unstoppable. The Alpha watched from the edge of the chaos, awe and fear in his gaze, realizing for the first time that she was no longer the girl who had trembled in his cave. She was destiny incarnate, and nothing, no counsel, no rival, no force, could stand against her now. The forest was silent now, but it was a heavy silence, the kind that pressed against your chest and made every breath taste like ash. Smoke still curled from the fallen trees and shattered ruins, silver sparks dying in the damp earth, leaving the night trembling in the aftermath of her power. She stood alone at the edge of the clearing, arms trembling, hair clinging to her face from sweat and rain, the glow of her silver flame fading but still alive in the tips of her fingers. Every nerve in her body thrummed with energy and exhaustion, every heartbeat a warning and a promise. The Alpha stepped closer, boots crunching against broken leaves. His golden eyes were wide, almost fearful, but there was a softness there, a plea that reached past the fire, past the destruction, straight to her chest. "Stay," he said, voice raw, almost desperate. "I need you. Here. With me." She looked past him, toward the horizon, where the first light of dawn brushed the treetops. The wind carried whispers of destiny, of prophecy, of choices she was never meant to make. Her mind raced, torn between what her heart craved and the path she felt drawn to, one she had never chosen, but one she had always carried inside her. She was strong now, and more powerful than anyone had believed, yet that strength felt like both a gift and a burden. And as she stood there, her gaze caught in the shifting shadows, the question hung in the air. Not for her, but for everyone watching, listening. Would you have feared her? Or followed her? Could you see the courage in her fire, the mercy in her wrath? Was she a hero? Or just a girl cursed with too much power, too much destiny, too much heart? The Alpha reached out, but she didn't turn. She only breathed, letting the wind play through the silver sparks that still lingered along her skin. And in that moment, suspended between love and fate, between hope and fire, the story whispered to the listener. If this story lit something inside you, subscribe to Moonlight Mate's story. Because here, destiny always burns beneath the moon. Every tale, on every heartbeat, every silver-flamed secret waits for you. Will you follow? Or will you watch from the shadows? The forest waited, heavy and alive, as if it had been holding its breath for centuries. Each step she took was deliberate, yet the earth itself seemed to shiver beneath her boots, small tremors whispering secrets she could almost hear but not yet understand. Moonlight cut through the branches in thin, silver knives, catching on droplets of rain, reflecting off her skin like shards of frozen fire. Shadows stretched long and unnatural, bending as though they had their own intent, and the silence. The silence wasn't empty. It was watching, waiting. Eyes glimmered in the darkness. Too many to count. Some were curious, some hungry, and some old, ancient, knowing. She felt them tracing her every movement. I felt their patience like a weight pressing against her spine. And yet she walked, head high, heart pounding, not with fear, not with doubt, but with the quiet fire of someone who had survived everything and refused to bow. Each footfall was a heartbeat, a declaration, a warning to whatever waited in the black. Then came the whispers, soft, impossible, curling around the trees like smoke. She is not the only one. A shiver traced her spine, and the hairs on her arms rose, but she did not falter. The true alpha hasn't risen yet. The words carried a weight, a threat, a promise, and she felt the pull of something greater than herself. A destiny that refused to be ignored, a storm yet to come, a path that would test everything she thought she knew about power, love, and loyalty. She paused at the edge of a small clearing, on where moonlight pooled like liquid silver, and for a moment she allowed herself a glance back at where chaos and fire had reshaped her world. The Alpha's voice echoed faintly in her memory, soft, pleading, filled with longing and awe. And she knew that the story was far from over, that danger and desire would follow her, unseen yet inevitable, like the shadows that stretched along the roots and rocks. The forest seemed to lean closer, breathing with her, listening to her resolve. Somewhere beyond the trees, something ancient stirred. Eyes blinked, teeth glinted, and a low, resonant growl rumbled. Not at her, but toward her. A warning? A challenge? Perhaps both. And as she disappeared deeper into the darkness, silver sparks flickering in her wake, the wind carried the final, haunting promise. This journey, this battle, and this fire in her veins was only beginning. The night had secrets, the moon had witnesses, and the world had no idea what was coming.